Okay, I wanted to get into the forced takeoff and forced landing functions, but before I do that, I want to emphasize that the settings I went over previously are sufficient for a Microsoft Flight Simulator session. They're, they will control AI under the control of the Microsoft Flight Simulator AI control program. But as I mentioned, I'm going over this from the perspective of a user who normally does airline or flying. So I fly with moderate to heavy traffic densities into complex airports. So I want specific flow control, traffic flow procedures to be in place at these airports, corresponding to real world procedures and weather forecast. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to use forced takeoff and landing to accomplish that. I'm going to work some examples. The first one's very simple, and then I'm going to get more complex. The first simple example is just a regional airport. This is an airport near where I live, Manassas Regional, KHEF. So say I was looking at the ATIS and 16 left was in use. I would just go to forced takeoff, type in 16 type in the ICAO, and then 16 left. Very simple example. That's all I need to enter for now, and just add new. So it adds it to the forced takeoff list. And while I'm looking at it, I could also specify the forced landing runway. So I go into the forced landing runway tab 5, enter the ICAO and the landing runway, and add that. So now it's added to the list, and this list will form a savable database that you can keep going back to for later sessions. So after I've made those changes, I need to save them. So I just go apply all pending changes, and the list is saved. And then I can, if AIFlow and AIGround are already running, the changes will take effect after about a minute. Or if not, I could just launch AIFlow and AIGround, as I mentioned before. So this is a pretty simple example to start with. It's so simple, in fact, you'd be wondering, like, well, if I'm checking the weather forecast, all I want to use is runway 16 left, and the winds are prevailing from that direction, fairly strong winds. You can be pretty sure that the Microsoft Flight Simulator controlled AI program is going to pick 16 left anyway. So, with examples this simple, it's debatable whether whether forced landings and takeoffs should even be used. But I'll get into some more complex examples now. A more complex example regards Manassas Regional itself that we already looked at. You can see there's actually two runways here, 16 left and 16 right, and 16 right is much shorter. And it looks like it's probably used for general aviation aircraft, whereas 16 left is used for jets. So if I wanted to get both runways in operation here, I've already entered the Manassas data, so instead of entering new data, I just double click on that, and it will populate the editing area here. I can add 16 right. And I'm not adding a new record to the database, I'm saving the modified existing record, so I just use save modified. So then it will take off from 16 left and 16 right. And when you specify two runways without any additional data, for takeoffs, the AIGround program chooses the runway that's closest to where the AI is pushing back to, specifically the entry to the runway. So if the AI was pushing back from the general aviation air parking area, it would tend to favor 16 right, whereas if it was a jet pushing back from the fixed-based operation area, it would tend to favor 16 left because that's a shorter taxi distance from where the AI is pushing back to the runway entry. So I can go ahead and change forced landing similar double click, I'm modifying it, 16 right, save modified. Okay, but I want to go a little deeper than that, so let's go back to forced takeoff. Like I said, 16 right looks like it's used for general aviation, and 16 left for jet traffic. So one modification I can do is, let me double click to modify it. I can restrict engine types to different runways, and that will override the default selection procedure I previously mentioned. So runway 1 is 16 left, it's a longer. I want to limit jet and heavy to that runway. Yes, I realize there probably won't be any heavy aircraft at 16 at this airport, but I'll just go ahead and click it anyway. So that limits jet and heavy to 16 left. And I could just keep it at that. That would mean that general aviation AI, like reciprocating propeller AI, could still use 16 left. There would be a mix there. If I just wanted to completely segregate lighter aircraft types to 16 right, this is what I would do. So for runway 1, 16 left, a longer runway, I'm going to limit jet, heavy, and you know what, I'm also going to limit turboprop too to the longer runway, 16 left. So I click that. So when you're limiting AI to one particular runway, what you usually do is, for the first runway, if I have jet, heavy, and turboprop, for the other runway, you want to select the remaining ones. It's always sort of that pattern. So the remaining ones for runway 2 are piston and helo. So what that means is, piston and helo is only going to use runway 2, which is 16 right, and the heavier aircraft are just going to use 16 left. So I say modified. So you can see the command string's a little more complicated here. And I can also do that for forced landing runways. Double click to modify. 16 left is a longer jet, heavy, turboprop. 16 right is a shorter piston, helo. Save modified. And then if I want to save those changes, go apply all pending changes.